How's it going, guys? So today I want to talk about how to correctly handle and tame your reptiles. So I get a lot of questions online, mostly people who buy baby animals, baby blue tongues, things like that. How to tame them down because they're really hissy and flighty and not the happiest little campers at this point in time. So people ask that, how to get them tamed as quick as possible, all that sort of stuff. So let's go over a few things you need to consider when you get a new reptile and you're trying to tame it. So when inexperienced people normally get their first animal, it's normally a young or baby animal, and this can be part of the issue because think about it, a young animal in the wild is prey to everything, especially little blue tongues, things like that. Birds, mammals, all sorts is out to get these little guys as some tucker. So naturally they have an inbuilt fear of anything bigger than them, especially a hand coming down over the top to come and grab them out of the enclosure. They're going to freak out, and that's where a lot of the problems start. So if your young animal is a bit on the grumpy side and doesn't like handling, maybe tries to bite, hisses like this little dude sometimes does, and just doesn't want a bar of it, it's really to be expected because they're a young animal and the big wide world, everything's scary to them. So in order to tame these animals down, we need to break this fear, get them used to us, establish a relationship in where the animal doesn't consider us a threat, doesn't think we're going to hurt it, and doesn't think we're going to cause it any harm or pain. So a big part about taming down reptiles is actually the way you handle them. If you're not handling them properly, it's really not going to work. The animal's going to be uncomfortable, it's not going to feel safe, and it's just extra stress. And stress for a reptile is very detrimental. So the three basic requirements for proper reptile handling is support, supporting the body, as you can see here. Easy as that, flat hands, the animal sits there. It's total support, so he feels safe. Second is no squeezing. A lot of people, especially with snakes, they get a snake and they just grab right onto it. That'll freak the animal out more and send it even more crazy. If you have an animal that is flighty and wants to run out of your hands, you simply just need to apply enough pressure to keep it there and have it slowly moving through your hand just so it doesn't dart right out. You don't want to completely restrict it because that'll just completely stress it out. And the last thing is no sudden movement. See, I'm being slow and fluid, not whipping him all over the place. So just, yeah, those three simple things usually makes for easy handling. So when reptiles are predated on in the wild, they're normally getting eaten by things like birds and mammals. And birds especially usually attack from the top. So they come, fly down, grab the animal from the top and fly away. So any attacks from above or any sort of movement from above can really startle and stress the animal. So that comes down to when you're actually taking the animal out of the enclosure, especially a ground-dwelling animal like this blue-tongued skink. If you're coming straight over the top of the animal, down on it, see that? It doesn't like it, it freaks it out. So what you want to do, especially with young blue tongues and things like that, in order to not freak them out as soon as you pick them up, come in from the side, or even scoop from underneath, and pick up like that. Nice and gentle, and no grabbing from over the top, because that is a one-way ticket to a stressed out animal. So like I mentioned earlier, different species require different kinds of handling, but the same basic rules apply. So same thing again, say I'm going to get this young Boyd's forest dragon out. I'm not going to come from over the top, even though this animal is tame and used to me, especially with a young animal. If you're coming in grabbing it over the top, it's just going to freak out. So with these guys, what we'll do is grab them from the side like this and hold them up like that. Now Boyds are a bit different due to their lifestyle, being an arboreal animal that lives up in the trees. They usually prefer to sit in a vertical position on your hand like that. That's where they're most calm. Now, you can hold them flat too, but then they might have a tendency to run off. Something they usually don't like is when you hold your hand down and lean the animal forward. That goes pretty much across the board for a lot of reptiles. See, a lot of people hold them and they dip the front end down so the head is down. The animal feels like it's falling and thus starts walking backwards to try and get away from that situation, and people start freaking out. They're like, oh, why is it trying to get out of my hands? Just move your hand position flat or slightly raised is usually the best. The amount you can tame down an animal can really vary depending on the species. So things like your blue tongues, bearded dragons, all those other common animals can get pretty tame and just sit there comfortably all the time, never have a worry in the world. There's obviously exceptions to every single rule. So some people might say, oh, all blue tongues are friendly. Absolutely not. I've got one out the back that wants to tear my finger off every time I go near it. But all my others are pretty much fine. And so you get exceptions like that within certain species. But then again, there's also species themselves that are different. This here is a Boyd's forest dragon. These guys aren't really handleable animals. And she's about to jump, so you got to be careful. So these guys aren't considered a handling pet. They're more of a display animal is what people call them. And I consider mine to be tame, but tame for a Boyd's forest dragon. So that's a lot different to something like a bearded dragon. These guys will kind of sit in your hand, which is pretty good for a Boyd's forest dragon, but generally these guys are a bit more flighty. They just want to run and jump out of your hands. But I consider mine tame with the fact that they've never tried to bite me. They are kind of amenable to handling in short sessions. And they're not too flighty. They don't try and run away if I go near them or anything like that. And she's really trying to jump now. So yeah, that's why it can vary between species. So as some animals can be really flighty and really scared of you when you first get them, for example, like you put your hand near them and they just want to run away, one of the ways you can bridge this gap and get them used to your presence, get them comfortable with you, get them associating you with a positive experience, is to actually use, you guessed it, food. So that's what I've done here with the Boyd's forest dragons. An animal that's typically not very, happy to be around you, a bit flighty, skittish. Same thing with water dragons. A lot of people can't tame down water dragons. But one way to get them used to you and accepting of you is through feeding them. Now I feed my dragons off tongs, and this is really good because it gets them really involved with you without the danger of you getting bitten. And you can also sort of make them go where you want. And it's good enrichment for you and the animal. It's a good sort of bonding session. So after a while of doing this sort of thing, the animals get really used to you and they associate you with a positive reward, and that is food, which is one of the strongest things for any reptile. So just a little disclaimer, whilst you're using the food to get more interaction with your animal, to get their fears of you diminished, you don't want to mix the feeding with handling. You want to separate those two times, because depending on the species, if they're in a food mode, it could be quite dangerous for you to try and handle them. So you want to separate those times, use the feeding to get the animal over their fears, and come down at a later time and use handling. That's another reason why I use tongs for feeding, so the animals associate the tongs with food as well as me. So if I come in without the tongs, they don't really think they're going to get fed because they know the tongs deliver the food. So you of course don't want to be over handling your animal. So when you're first starting out, you don't want to be handling it for a few hours at a time. You should really just be doing, a few minutes every day maybe after you've let it settle into its new environment, and it should tame down from there. Some animals may take longer than others. Some animals may never really tame down. There's always that exception of just an animal that just really doesn't want to have any bit of it. There's some animals that'll be exceptionally tame. It just all depends on the animal. They have their own individual personalities and preferences. Now another thing to consider when you're trying to tame down your reptile is when you're actually handling them. So here I have a blotched blue tongue, and as you can see it's actually shedding, and as you can see it does not want to be held right now. And that brings up a good point. If your animal's going to shed or is in some sort of uncomfortable state or time, don't be handling your reptiles. It just stresses them out, and it can really set you back in progress. Furthermore, if you have a male animal, for example, that's just starting breeding season or is trying to breed the females, and that's what he has his mind on, he's just looking for girls and hormones are raging and he's territorial, you obviously don't want to be handling. It's not going to be a great time for that. So things like this you just have to consider whilst handling the animals for best results. Another thing is to actually work through the ugly behaviours. So for example, this little western blue tongue here, when I first got it, it was always, whenever I picked it up, it was always just crapping on me. Just, you know, making a big mess, and it was quite proud of itself. So what I did was, I just let it do it, and I kept handling it. I didn't put it down after that happened. I didn't put it back. I didn't give it that satisfaction of knowing that if it pooped on me, that would be the end of its session. That would stop the handling from happening. And while the Western Blueies aren't that fond of handling still, I never get crapped on anymore, which is lovely. So you just gotta reinforce those behaviours that are positive. So the negative behaviour of him taking a crap on me had no result for him in the long run. He was just expelling for no reason. Didn't help him out. And now he knows it doesn't help him, so he doesn't need to do it. I saw a similar thing by a video by my friend TC Houston over at Reptile Mountain. He had a blue tongue that was really bitey. As soon as he put his hand in there, he was trying to bite his hand off. So what he did was reinforce that that behaviour has no positive outcome for that animal. It doesn't stop what's going to happen. So I remember watching him, what he did was he had this little paddle. He let the animal bite the paddle and then picked it up, showing the animal that it biting something has no effect for it. So that's what I recommend as well. Make sure you guys don't just use this video as your knowledge base. Like with anything with reptiles, research as much as you can, get as much information in, build your own opinion based on the facts. And thanks for watching, guys. Good luck with your animals. Leave any comments or questions below, and I'll see you next time.